What's up, guys? Welcome to Three's a Podcast. I'm here with Ms. Pulaski and Evan Reda. And today we're going to
Yo.
be discussing the importance of the family structure and how it affects every part of society. Mr. Pulaski will be heading this topic. So, Ms. Pulaski, what is your, how,
Well,
in your opinion, how does it affect every part of society and why?
that's a good place to start because it is a bit of a it's kind of an all-encompassing topic because it can go in a lot of directions. But I guess the to start off just the basics and we'll kind of unravel from there. The reason why it affects every part of society is because I mean society. This is going to sound like you know it's going to sound like sociology 101 or something, but or I realize how dumb this is going to sound, but I mean, it has to be stated. Society is basically just made up of people, right? So the thing is, anyone who's a met, I'm, I mean, you can look at it top down, right? You look at like crime rates, right? Heavy crime areas or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you think like there's a lot of factors,
Yeah.
but the basics of it are to me is if you it all comes down to parenting and the environment you grow up
Right.
in. And so that's why I think it's that's why I think it affects every part of society. If you have a whole broken down neighborhood, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, that's just living in poverty, crime, gangs, stuff like that,
Right.
you could probably look at every single one of those. Like, start, look. You could probably do surveys in the area and find out that it's a bunch of single mother households, a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of orphan kids, abandoned kids, kids who are leaving the house at 14, 15, 16,
Right.
girls getting pregnant at 12 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess to answer that basic question, and I understand these are complex issues. I'm not saying that it's like 100% this in
Right.
every situation, but I
Right.
think that it's a pretty glaring. I think it's pretty obvious that
Mm-hmm.
when the family structure's messed up, and you don't have parents. You either don't have parents at all, or you don't have parents playing the roles they should be playing
Right.
in their kid's life.
Mm-hmm.
You end up having, I mean, look at I mean, I won't speak for you two or anyone, but we all know people who are dealing with crap their entire life just because maybe their dad was an a-hole.
Yeah.
It's like now they're dealing with emotional issues over that for years. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Of course.
think you take that, you look at like a poor neighborhood, you take someone who maybe has a single mother who's poor, and you put them in an environment where they're surrounded by violence and gangs and drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what chance do they have to become like a productive, a productive member of society? It's like,
Right.
so anyway, I guess just to kind of overall emphasize there, I just think that if we could focus on that and get that right,
Mm-hmm.
it could actually solve a lot of these other issues. We wouldn't be arguing as much about school shootings or things like that if we had kids who were properly parented. I mean, that might be another issue, but
Right.
and I think the thing that I think irritates me about it is politicians never talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes conservatives will throw it out there, talk about important family values and stuff. Usually, when they say family values, they're talking specifically on the abortion topic,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
like, or like talking about it'll end up being sexual stuff, but it's usually they're just kind of playing to the crowd, and
Yeah.
it's just frustrating that it's like we're having all within the country, we have all these social issues and all these arguments, and we're
Mm-hmm.
trying to deal with poverty and violence, and it's like if you could just focus on, it's like you're treating the symptoms, and
Right.
it's like you need to cut it off at the head a little bit, which is. And now here's the other part of it, by the way. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to stand on a hill and preach here because
Right.
I don't necessarily know how you go about doing
Mm-hmm.
that. I mean, the obvious answers is that community was more important at a certain time in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
Church, for instance, even if you didn't have necessarily the best family at home, church families and communities were important. So
Right.
you were still kind of getting some of those elements.
Mm-hmm.
but now family has become, and part of it just being it's you're not relying on your family as much in a tribal sense as we were even 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're at a point now in America where even the poorest people have smartphones, and
Mm-hmm.
we're economically we're doing fairly well.
Right.
And I think with the internet too,
Mm-hmm.
we're living in a time where it's very easy to get disconnected from people.
Yeah.
And I think that might be another aspect. But anyway, as you can see, it sounds like I'm kind of rambling, but as you can see, it's such a big topic. That's why I think it'd be good. That's why I picked it to do on the show, is because I think we could kind of dissect these different areas, um, and go into them. I don't know if you guys have any particular places you kind of talk about, or you have any ideas about family. I'm sure we'll get into the specifics, but
Um, yeah, that is a lot to take in. One thing that I've noticed is that I've heard that the family structure, the way it operates, is actually um, I don't know how to explain this very well, but it's basically like a mirror of how to. Um, I don't know, Evan. I might need your help, but um, like a mirror of how to like run things. Yeah, even when you're not in the family, like when you're like running a business or something like that. Um,
I see what you're saying. It's sort of a
yeah,
structure.
yeah, exactly. So that's actually I didn't know. Like I understand we're getting into the. I feel like more of the emotional parts of it.
That's okay.
Yeah. I didn't know if you were going to how I guess how broad the or what type of parts you wanted to basically center on.
I,
But I noticed.
I think we could go anywhere we want to go. I mean, wherever's interesting, we can go down. I'll probably, even if we do get off on some other areas, I think at the end of it, if it's interesting to us, it'll be interesting to the listeners, I think.
Mm,
And I'll make sure to touch on the points that I kind of want to touch on. So take
right.
it wherever you want it to go, man.
So I know that that's just something that I've been told. So it's from my understanding. It's stuff that I've heard from like church and all of that. It's not. Um, yeah, it's the yeah stuff that I've been taught at a couple churches that I've gone to. Valid Worldview, and I've dang. I've noticed online lately they have, and I think it's more along like feminist or something like that. There was this one YouTuber that said that they were trying to, and I think as a society we don't necessarily understand how important like fathers are, but they there's this thing that's been happening where they undermine I guess the importance of how the importance of a father and how greatly a father can impact a child and stuff like that. Um, and I definitely know in societies that, well, in life really, when you have a bad upbringing, whether or not your father was there, but if you have a bad upbringing, that can greatly affect um, your take on the world and how you better how you perceive the world and your idea and stuff like that, which can in essence greatly affect greatly affect the world around us. You said that we are becoming more of a fatherless society. Is that what you said
Um,
earlier, Matt?
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I said that exactly, but I agree with that. Well,
Mm-hmm.
just I mean, statistically, we are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So,
that's what I meant. That's what I was trying to get to.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Fatherless society just sounded more poetic in some way, so that's why I wasn't thinking necessarily stats. But it
yeah,
sounds like it kind of sounds like a book that your professor would a college professor would make you read.
yeah, it
The
does.
Fatherless Society.
It does. It does. It reminds me of that movie, what the Poets Society or something like that. But anyway,
Oh yeah.
yeah, Dead Poets Society.
That's right. That's right.
Um, but no, so like understanding like with that knowledge, knowing how bad that is, that greatly affects the kids, and it does trickle down very much, and will affect the I don't know. I feel like if things don't change, it just becomes an endless cycle. We have more vain kids because they don't feel value, and so we have more of these. I don't know, like these apps and these other like products geared toward people because they don't feel valuable, or they don't have any self-worth or anything like
So
that. I'm sorry.
are you saying like they're? Do you mean so they don't feel value?
Yeah, so a
So
lot of
they don't feel value in themselves, so they're finding value in material items more.
yeah, and I know a lot of the strength and stuff like that. Like so, okay, based on experience and based on my upbringing and just my brothers and sisters, I know that my dad was more emotionally there. It'd probably be a difference in the way I was I was brought up, um, and there would definitely be a difference in the way my sisters and brothers were brought up. I came from a place that was very like emotionally abusive and physically, but even after it stopped, I didn't have that kind of like I'm proud of you, you're worthy kind of like moment or whatever. Um, so I feel like when there's not that kind of thing in the home, then you know kids, children are going to look for it elsewhere, and so they're always going to need something that gives them that self-worth or whatever if they can't get it from their father. And so do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
They're finding substitutes.
Yeah, they're finding substitutes, and I was going back to what you said earlier. You said statistically we are becoming more of a fatherless kind of society, and so that affects the children, and how things. Um, I can't think of the word, but
Yeah,
just how things
well,
turn
yeah,
out. Yeah.
yeah. Even emotionally can mess
Mm-hmm.
mess people up, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think. Well, Evan, what do you think? I mean, do you have anything to say on what we've talked about thus far?
Well, you guys have covered a lot of ground already. Um, I was going to get into psychologically how family affects you, but him bringing up the endless cycle,
Yeah,
I think that's you know that's very accurate. I think a lot of people, I don't know, I think that's almost become common knowledge. It used to be something that was, I guess, more well known among psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, you are prone to repeat the mistakes of your parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were talking about the basically how fathers are becoming less important or considered less important in
Yeah,
society.
they are considered less important in society. Yes.
That comes, I would say that comes from years of us building a fatherless society. Um, I mean, because when something's absent, it will come to be viewed as unimportant because people don't realize a lot of times the issues that they have, and they
Mhm.
will, decide, I guess not having the benefits, you don't really see the flaws.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have like much of a comparison,
Right. Right.
and I'd say a majority of people I know our age, do at least know their father, but there was still the divorce, or it was a broken home, or he never showed up, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think I don't know if you want to get into how we start kind of repairing some of these issues yet, but that's one that has really I don't know. That's an issue that I've thought a lot about and very passionate about, is how prominent that's become, especially in American culture.
Mm-hmm.
And how it's, I'm looking at our generation and the next, because we've got Gen Z coming in, they're getting, up into, their late teens, early 20s here pretty soon. And I can see it happening again with them very easily.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
Gen Z. Yeah, because I believe Gen Z starts at 1995 or 96 and ends at 2015. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure because they've moved the years around for millennials and everyone else. So,
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure why,
um,
but
I
yes.
will, I mean, yeah, I will say it all comes down to almost it's a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And then, with that pattern is a general lack of accountability, where a lot of us say, a lot of people say to themselves, well, I can't, this is all I know,
Mm-hmm.
and don't take it upon themselves to make the change.
Yeah.
So I think, the reason it's gotten worse is a lack of personal accountability. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it will continue to get worse until people, at least, there is a large movement to change that.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
A
true.
movement in practice, not a movement of awareness, because everybody's already aware of it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I think let's go back. This actually kind of does go back to like a couple of um, a couple of topics that we did before. I can't exactly remember what they were, um, but I know there was. Oh, I think one of them was an after hours episode, but I know one of the topics definitely will that'll bring up is the one you were talking about, like self reflection, um, and stuff. The foundation of self improvement, and I know that when it comes to other, you know, other people having kids, and whether or not like I know there's probably an issue with father. So I didn't want to like bring it away from the family structure, influencing society. Anyway, sorry, I was trying to.
Yeah.
But on the topic, that we're at, we're God.
Yeah. Well, just
Well,
about any of the issues we're going to discuss is going to come back to that very issue of you have a man that did not want to handle his responsibilities, so he took off.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. That's kind of where I was
And
gonna
then
go.
his
Yeah.
son did the same thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
after a few generations, it just becomes the standard. That's just what that family does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as messed up as it sounds, that's what And then you have a slew of other, not just not just psychological issues, but
Right.
just, just so many things can be traced back to that one issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
The interesting thing is to see how it spreads and how it starts. I mean, obviously you have the like, just because what you were saying was interesting, like you end up having this cycle where it just becomes normalized within the family.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess you have all those kids going out and doing that. So over time, you are spreading this. But I always wonder how it starts, and if you think about it, it all comes down to sex, which we'll get into that, I think, in a bit. But
Right.
I mean, anyone, you could come from the most well-functioning family, and you make a dumb move, or something goes wrong, or the condom breaks, or something like that. And now, because this is what I think, right? I think a lot of this stuff starts off with kids being, and I say kids, but I mean, you're a 15-year-old having sex, and you
Right.
get your 14-year-old girlfriend pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no matter what family you came from or what great upbringing you came from,
Mm-hmm.
you're now automatically, just by virtue of being young teen parents, are going to be starting your kid off on a worse level. So it can almost happen to anyone,
Mm-hmm.
really, just because of the nature of sex, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and look at the modern attitude towards it.
Yeah.
Sex?
I mean, yeah, you can look at, and I'm not saying that necessarily everybody needs to fall in line and follow the traditional Christian value of it, but it is held in such a liberal regard at this point
Mm-hmm.
that, I don't know, we've gotten to the point where we've completely ignored the psychological consequences of that. To where it's just, I mean, it's become so casual.
Yeah.
And even though there are studies that show that there are,
Consequences.
profound psychological effects that
Yeah.
come from your attitude and how you judge those actions,
Mm-hmm.
um, down to, chemicals in the brain,
Mm-hmm.
how your neurology will rewire itself.
Yeah.
Um, or you can simplify it and call it, the addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and trauma. And I mean, all that comes from getting to a point where you just decide that anything goes, and nobody decides to guard or temper themselves. So they throw caution to the wind, and then you get, all the issues you were just talking about, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to, um, you know, huge outbreaks of disease, and
Right.
um, even a very, I don't know, I guess you could say that the having a more tolerant attitude on rape to an extent. And I'm not talking about, just the general public, but there are
What do you mean
more and more of
tolerance to
these.
rape?
There are more and more pockets that I'm seeing around, just online, and just random conversations have happened where people are just like acting like it's just not, it's just not as bad as, it really is. And that concerns me, because I mean, the average person is going to say, no, that's messed up. But
I think,
we're seeing more and more people that are messed up in the head, that are just like, or getting
yeah.
messed up in the head.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to that, I don't want to like change the subject at all, but on that note for a moment, we probably get another podcast, or yeah. Anyway, I think the issue is like, sometimes I know we have this problem with women crying rape, and there's been a number of women that have done that. And when you're sitting there hearing, talking about feminism and how cancerous it can be, and you get these feminists who are, saying that we live in a rape culture, but then on the other hand, they're crying rape, and it's not true at all. We get to this point, and I know it's accidental. I know it's not on purpose, but we get to this point to where we're like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you because you've done it before. You know, um, we we already despise feminism as it is, um, and the discussions that they have, because they're just so like not necessarily like too meaningless, but they're just very small. It's just very small things that these feminists like care about, like manspreading and just other like meaningless topics like that. And then when you hear them talk about rape and then do something like that, that just I feel like it just taints their it does taint their like it taints what comes out of their mouth as a not as a movement. It taints their movement is what it does. And in tainting their movement, we are tainting, twisting, people who are, you know what I'm getting at. But when other women like start to do that, yes, we just have this idea of no, they're not telling the truth because they've done it before, and I don't think it's, that obviously wasn't purposeful. It just happened. And I know there's been discussions on talking to women about that, because there's been plenty of videos where they're like, no, like that's totally wrong. If you expect to be taken seriously, then you obviously shouldn't do that. And anytime that happens, a lot of the other women that actually come out and are being raped aren't going to be taken seriously, because more and more women are. Anyway, that sorry, do you know what I'm saying, Evan?
Yeah, I get.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But unless you had something else that you wanted to say, I did have a question.
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
no.
What's the question?
I'm kind of just trying to expand on how dark an ill-tempered person can get without the right family structure. Because anytime you go, you look at a person's family life,
Right.
that is someone that's committed heinous crimes, unless you have someone who's a sociopath, or there's usually some sort of. It wasn't necessarily a moment that made them break. It was a series of moments.
Right.
And it was something that they observed within their family life that subconsciously became just a part of their reality. It was just a belief that they started to hold. And sometimes you don't even know where that belief came from. It's just, for as long as I can remember, I've always felt this way about this.
Right.
And to you, it's a total fact, because it's something that keeps manifesting itself in your life. You keep going through that pattern, and it goes back to, oh well, you don't even know how that crappy thing you had to deal with for the first 18 to 20 years of your life,
Right.
It caused you to have that belief. But anyway, what was your question?
So, my question is, do you think more of the families are failing because there's lack of people getting married, and there's not much of a when it comes to, like, let's say they did have a kid, they weren't married. Is it easier for the partner to just leave, knowing that he's not married?
And I'm going to say a lot easier.
Okay, well, and just to be clear, I did say he, and it wasn't supposed to be directed at he's, but that's why I said the partner earlier. But anyway.
We could kind of address that, though, the whole he thing. The reason why, and I know people could, get upset about different roles or whatever roles, but just biologically, I think it's easier for I think there's a reason why guys walk out and women aren't like ditching. Which, by the way, that does happen. Let's be clear.
Yeah,
Women
no, it
do
does.
leave men with kids sometimes. Like I know that has happened, but I
Mhm.
think most of the time, they biologically men don't start connecting with a child until after it's born. But the woman has with the child already, so it's a lot easier, I think, for men to just abandon a pregnant woman. And kind of get off. I
Mhm.
mean, they don't get off completely scot free, obviously, but
Right.
as far as not having to be there as a father, they basically can. I mean, you might have to pay. I think I don't know exactly how all of it works, but I'm sure you have to pay like alimony or whatever. But other than that, I don't think it's not like you're forced to like love your child or spend time with them.
Right.
So it is kind of interesting. But anyway, I think I just wanted to point that out. Like, there's I think there's some pretty good reasons as to why we're mostly talking about men, and we're talking about fatherless
Mhm.
things. Not to discount
Well,
people without mothers or mothers, terrible mothers who walked out, but just generally, it's mostly a man thing, to be honest.
yeah. I mean, let's bite the bullet and just and just basically say that the majority of it was us. It was the guys. We can blame ourselves for that. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
anyway, what was your question again?
So I was saying that I think there's been a statistic that has noted a decrease in marriages, and so I said,
Uh,
you think the family is failing because since they're not married and yet let's say they have a kid, it's easier for the guy or girl to walk out.
we can look, legally look at marriage, or we can just look at the total lack of commitment that exists now.
Right.
I mean, because even within marriage, we have people, I have people my age that are on their second marriage by
Mm-hmm.
now, and I know people that have been married, 4 or 5 times
Right.
that are in their 40s or 40s or 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So it really there's this whole internal idea that people have now towards relationships where it's just uh, they're just not that committed.
Right.
Even a wedding is simply a romantic gesture, and um, it's gotten to the point where even if you do have kids together, well, we can just bail, or we can just. I mean, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
In that context, but
Mm-hmm.
you have the guy that cheats or the guy that just the couple that just gets bored,
Yeah.
and to me that's not as much of an issue until you have kids involved,
Right.
because a lot of times it's like, oh, we just don't, you know instead of working through the actual issue, it's just, oh, we're just going to bail,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it becomes a total lack of concern, which you almost blatantly see that
Mm-hmm.
if you watch a lot of even marriage counselors on TV, where it's just like it's taken to the point where the kids aren't even a priority.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, follow your own happiness, and well, you brought new life into the world. Your happiness isn't as important anymore.
Right. Right.
It becomes your main objective to ensure that that child has the best life possible you can give it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, and that's where my issue comes in. It's like, well, was this an impulse marriage? One, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because you do see more and more of that, especially in you see that a lot among Christians. A lot of 18 and 19-year-olds getting married,
Mm-hmm.
or they do it straight out of college. Me and Matt were around an entire culture of people that thought you had to be married basically by 22 as soon as you got out of college.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking
To the
about.
point where it wasn't about the relationship, it was about the social status.
Yeah. The status. Yeah.
And that's all well and fun if you have a society that holds you accountable and makes you stick with the vows that you make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we don't have that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I think
So we're getting married older now
Mm-hmm.
than we were 50, 100 years ago,
Right.
and I honestly think that the people that are getting married around 25 to 30 are going to be a lot more successful than. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, dumb young people. The older I get, the more I dislike the last age group, because I'm just like, I can't believe how stupid I was. If I had made this commitment then, not just marriage, it's like I would be so screwed now.
Yeah.
But we even have people that are encouraging their kids to get married.
People who are
almost right out of high school. Ultra conservatives that are, they will encourage their kids to get married right out of high school. You have people marrying, mostly religiously. Most religious people are following a trend where they marry just for sex.
Yeah.
And a lot of those married, and the Christians used to boast a lower divorce rate, but that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-mm.
So this goes across all demographics in the U.S.
Yeah. I heard there was a lower divorce rate, but I heard there's a lower divorce rate because less people are getting married. So
you could say that now, yeah.
okay.
Well, and people don't know how to have a relationship anymore. I would use the term relationally retarded. And I know that from my own personal history, relationships that I've been in. And you look at, just if you look at the average couple today, I would say a good 70% of couples that I know are constantly engaged in completely stupid arguments and won't work, they can't work through the issue. So I mean that works socially as well. Social anxiety is on the rise. We can debate the cause of that all night. But I think a large part of that does come down to your family structure. And I came from, my father wasn't real social.
Right.
So I took on some of that social anxiety just because I wasn't as used to it when I got into adulthood.
Right.
And of course I'm over that now. But there are some people that carry that their entire lives.
The social anxiety that comes from their father.
But and I really think there's a point where we have to put the smartphone down and we have to actually learn how to relate to each other. 10 years ago, I would have said put down the laptop. But it's just becoming easier and easier to not have to interact with people.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And that will affect. I mean, it sounds comical, but Fortnite has been cited in thousands of divorce proceedings.
What?
The past couple of years, yeah.
What the heck? Oh my God.
So you have guys that'd rather do online gaming than spend time with their wives, and that causes a divorce.
Well, hold up now. I mean, there's certainly a defense for the men who, look, there's things Fortnite can give you that your wife can't. Let's just say that.
No, I mean there is an offense for that, but not when it's taken to.
I was joking
an extent,
a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to neglect. You don't want to neglect your significant other to play video games.
Yeah.
No, that's really fucked up.
To the point, I mean, it is being taken to the point of neglect. Of course, you go the other way around. I think it goes with both genders, but it's primarily female. You have social media. The chick can't put down her phone, and that's affecting relationships.
Yes. Okay. So today I was literally looking at, and okay, so to an extent this can affect whether or not you were to get married. But anyway, I was literally looking at people who are doing like plastic surgery or something like that, and they do plastic surgery to look like Snapchat filters.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that? Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of this happening. I've not seen it. I don't know what it looks like, but
Yeah.
I've certainly heard the tales.
Um, and man, it's really sad, how vain people are, and um, I feel like this goes back to the whole value thing. There was this girl that said that she wanted plastic surgery and it was to fix her nose, right? Because she saw it on the Snapchat filter. I think it was this. It was either a Snapchat filter. Or there was some app called it was something face anyway, where you could like Photoshop in quotes anyway your face and move your nose up and down and stuff like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
after she gets the plastic surgery, she still says, I still might use the app or whatever, or the filters or something like that. And so, shit, I had somewhere I was going to go with this, and then I can't even remember. Oh yes, I was going to say this goes back to what I said earlier about not feeling valued, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well, and that starts with your parents.
yeah, it does.
You could ask her what her dad was like,
Uh huh.
and
Yeah.
I guarantee you're going to get a series of maybe not real specific, but you get a series of messed up events in her life
Uh huh.
that would tell you basically, oh well, yeah, this is why this behavior is so prevalent.
Right.
That's it's kind of been like the time old joke, kind of a joke, but kind of like a spot, which is actually kind of true, is like, ask, ask, ask if you're going to date a girl, like figure out what her relationship is like with her father, because then you're going to figure out if she's crazy, or something. Kind of a joke, but in all seriousness, as I've gotten older, and I'm sure you guys have been the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be you kind of look at the crazy women and think that in a joking way, but then the more you start having friends, like meeting more women who, like, you can actually see how badly they were affected. Not sometimes their father was abusive or something, but there's times where it's like there's some people, it's like their father just insult them at some point, or said something kind of like passive aggressive, and it can actually affect them for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Their dad told them that they didn't look very pretty or something like that, and like that.
Yes.
That kind of stuff, I've heard that a lot, like, and seen how important the role of the father is to a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I said, the thing about what we're saying is it's going to sound like we're speaking in cliches, but on this topic, it's just so true. But I think a father to a daughter should be representative of the type of man that you would want as a husband. And that's that
Yes.
thing where you see these women sometimes going for the most dickhead guys, and
Because,
they're going for alcoholics and abusers. I mean, look at almost any woman who I'm generalizing here. This isn't every case, but in my life, every woman that I've ever met who is attracted to abusive a-holes, their father was an abusive a-hole.
yeah.
Maybe not directly to them, but to their mother. It's like there is a thing where fathers women are kind of looking for, it sounds weird and stuff, obviously, not in any weird way, but
Right.
but a father, it's your actions and the way you're setting up this model of what a husband and a father is. And if you're not, if you're not aware of that responsibility, and you're an abusive dick, or
Yeah.
even just like I said, even just passive comments or something, you don't realize
Mm-hmm.
these women are gonna grow up, they're gonna end up finding guys who are doing the same thing. Like, and like I said, that's not every case. I got to be clear. I'm generalizing a little bit here, but
Right.
it's certainly anecdotally that's true for me. Like, I mean, I could say almost 100%, and then even just kind of across the board, it seems to be the case.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but
Well, it goes the other way too, though. If you're a guy, it's not only your image of what a woman should be, but what a woman should put up with, right? Because
Yeah.
you get you have a lot of the guys that bail on their family,
Mm-hmm.
and to them, and to a lot of them, it's not even considered a bad thing sometimes because
Right.
to them it was what they knew.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they saw their dad do it 2 or 3 times,
Yeah,
and
it's how they knew how to respond. Yes.
but then it's like, oh well, this is just what women are for. This is what women are expected to put up with in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even though they felt bad about how it affected their mom, it's like, oh well, this is just life. You know,
Right.
so I mean, like I said, you do have women that bail in the family, but generally, it's so I don't know the scale is so much smaller that it's difficult to even really talk about and bring it up as a major issue in our society.
Mm-hmm.
Because generally, the woman leaves, she takes the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost every time that actually happens.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is true that women initiate, decide to end most relationships. They initiate most of the breakups and a lot of the divorces, but
Mm-hmm. Wow.
they're not taking off usually and leaving the kids.
Yeah.
So, that has to do with the biology and the psychology of both of the of male and female, but
Well,
it's just overall we have. I don't know. I think what we need to get down to, we could have done this actually for Father's Day, but
I didn't think about that.
you almost got to understand the importance of your role to your
Mhm.
family, to society.
Yeah.
I think that understanding, it's very important as a father to instill that
Mm-hmm.
as young as possible
Right.
and be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
As far as someone our age that this is all foreign to, start learning now, start changing yourself psychologically, start
Right.
deciding that you're not going to continue the cycle, because it really only takes one person to break the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but I was going to say, before I forget real quick, you can see how much this ties to us talking about when you have the subject of self-reflection, because there's a huge element of that self-reflection and self-awareness thing.
Yes.
Like, if you're not aware that you're in a cycle, if you're not aware that you're part of one, then, how can you expect to change it? But
Right.
anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times there is kind of an odd awareness
Mm-hmm.
that it's a standard within their family, but it's almost understood as it almost can't be. They can't do anything about it, or they don't know how to. From what I've observed, the conversations I've had with people that have been in that situation is, well, for 4 generations, this has been the standard, and this is all I know. That's kind of, and you can view that as a cop out an excuse, or you can view it as a legitimate, I don't know what to do here. But if I had to give the advice, what I would say is, the next generation they may hear about what you went through, but it's not their reality. So it didn't affect them psychologically, as much. Knowing about something doesn't affect you as much as experiencing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And, there was I guess I'll go, Pastor Stephen Furtick
Mm-hmm.
at Elevation Church. He has a very similar story where his dad was the one that broke the cycle.
Yeah.
And he never knew his father. He never knew his grandfather, basically.
Right.
But this pastor, his life was completely different. Even though because his father, basically struggled his way through trying to learn how to be a good father and break the cycle and give them something better.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that it's going to be easy,
Right.
but it is possible. I hear those stories all the time. Now, of course, this was he is a religious person, and his father was religious.
Mm-hmm.
But but his father wasn't raised religious. It was a desire to break it and a willingness to do whatever it took to make a change. And that's affected already the next 2 generations of his family.
Right.
Of his, what his father did affected, already,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I guess most of the examples I could give that have done that would be pastors.
Who have broken the
But
cycle.
yeah,
Is that correct?
yeah.
Okay.
But there are other people in my personal life that have broken the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly a process of relearning.
Right.
And relearning, it can be very difficult because a lot of that stuff is in your subconscious.
Right.
You're doing a lot of uncomfortable things to change somebody else's reality before it happens. I know that sounds, I guess you could say, very metaphysical, but
right.
I mean that's what you're doing. Is you're conscious enough to, if you can start it before you have kids,
mm-hmm.
you decide that you're going to wait to have kids until you're committed, and you can produce that.
Right.
A better life. That's even better.
Mm-hmm.
But people have to be aware. You have to be aware of your pattern to break it, and you have to be willing to admit to yourself that this didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I messed up. This is the pain I went through, and I don't
Right.
want anybody else to go through it.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, your son's going to make your mistakes, more than likely, and your daughter's going to go after guys that are going to make those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the whole
And
cycle's gonna start over again.
Yeah, and it will generally happen repeatedly. You'll have a daughter that's got, 5 kids with 3 different guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it came down to, well, he bailed and I saw my mom do that.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to keep going kind of in circles here, but that's the main issue, the main core of what sets a person up to, not only view the world, but how they view themselves.
Well, yeah. I know we did talk about. So I know Matt's whole topic was the family structure, and we kind of touched on. We touched a little bit on the family structure and how it relates to places of business and stuff, but very little. And then yeah, our main topic was fathers and stuff like that. So Matt, what I don't know, is there anything you want to add, or is there other parts of the family structure topic that you kind of wanted to touch on, or that you talked about that I just kind of because there was so much in the first introduction that you said. So you there, Matt? Hey, Matt.
I think he might be having some technical difficulties.
Oh shit.
Check your mic button and make sure that you're not muted.
There we go. Yes, I was muted, but
Okay.
for some reason something was glitching and I couldn't get to unmute it. No, but I did hear everything you said.
Okay, cool.
I was going to say it's interesting. We might actually, it might be one of those topics where we might have to do a part 2, maybe in a few weeks or something,
I would
because
love that, actually. Yeah.
we really, if that's okay with you guys, we've already gone an hour and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface because at this point, I think this could end up being like a 3-hour long podcast because there's so many different areas to dive into. Because we're already hitting the hour mark here, but I was gonna say, yeah, because diving into this, because we're, Evan brought up obviously, how do you kind of stop this, and part of it is kind of recognizing that you're in a cycle and kind of manning up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also the other aspect of it too, which is the whole sex aspect. I mean, all of this, fatherlessness and stuff. A lot of it comes from the fact that there's so many kids being born. There's kids having kids. You know what I mean? And there's a lot to address there, I think, because there's even before you have any kids. This is where, I mean, we'll get into maybe we can get into it a little bit here. I think, by the way, I'm totally open to someone arguing against this. I'd love to hear counter arguments and things, but I think that, and maybe this is a rigid point of view, I think your parenting starts before you even have a kid. I think as soon as you start, having sex, basically, you've got to start considering the idea because,
Oh yeah.
and part of that means safe sex. And to me, if you're some 19-year-old douchebag that is still, I mean, let's be honest, guys. You hear kids talk about, it's like, oh, he's 10 years old, he still believes in Santa Claus. Like, that's a little too old. It's like, okay, 18 is already too old to be believing in the pull-out method. Okay, and my, it's a little bit of a joke, but it's also like it really is true. It's like guys, that don't wear condoms all the time and are knocking girls up. It's like you're already a bad father, right? To me, you already are. You don't have any kids, and you're already a bad father because you're not ready to have a kid, and you're gambling the idea. So you're gambling your child having a potential rough start in life. Because you want to, be Mr. Feel Good.
Yeah.
And I know I just instantly turned into a stepdad or something, but
no, that's good.
it was the most white dad thing I could have said. But anyway, anyway, I think that's like a whole topic there is the sex thing, and responsibility with safe sex. And that kind of leads into another subject too, because I was going to talk about the whole Christian aspect of family values.
Oh yeah.
It's an important part of Christian culture. And I actually think that people write off family values a lot and family structures because of the religious aspect. I think they go, there's so many people who are so used to just discounting Christian beliefs and like, oh, they're just a bunch of loony bags and oh, they're too traditional. It's like, yeah, but there's actually, even if you take all the religious, take all the Christianity out of it, there's still major utility to a lot of those things, including the ideas about sex. Like, obviously, I'm pretty liberal on sexual topics, I think, but obviously there's utility to the idea of like premarital sex being a problem and things like that, because if you wait till you're married to have sex, you're not going to have, you're already bypassing a ton of issues that a lot of other people are having. Because that means that means at least you're in a committed relationship before you have a kid.
Yeah.
Now you look at people who don't barely even know each other and they're having a kid. It's like, of course that's going to be a rocky start. And by the way, I'm not even trying to be kind of Mr. Conservative Christian over here. I don't necessarily think premarital sex is morally wrong, but I'm just saying I get the idea of why. I understand. It's like you can't act like there isn't some reasons behind these things, because people try to act like, oh, Christians are just prudes and they make up all these silly rules about how you can't have sex, and they just want to keep you locked up, and control your body. And it's like, no, there's like a lot of utility to these ideas. Maybe they started focusing less on the actual, more on the rules and less on the reasoning, but there's actually some good reasoning to the ideas.
Don't throw the party if you're not going to stay for the cleanup. I think that's a good way to describe it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, like you said about the pull-out method, we could argue about a lack of education, lack of sex education, but I feel like we're in an age where you can learn anything you want.
Yeah.
By pulling, it was a wonderful device in your pocket that can tell you all the knowledge known to man. And sex is an important part of a person's life. And if you don't have that basic knowledge, I feel like I don't know. My personal philosophy is if you don't know how to prevent kids, you shouldn't have kids.
Yeah.
Because I've heard so many. You mentioned the pull-out method. I've heard so many dumb myths. From using the shower as birth control to certain positions, and it's
There's the
you know
whole.
for someone who is anyone over the age of you're saying 18, I would say 50.
Yeah.
Considering the fact that we have a formal class in most public school systems, and having something that is considered to be such a large impact on your life, I don't understand why most people don't look this stuff up. Or
Well, I think part of that, but bringing it all the way back to the family, this is that cycle because look, you can have sex ed classes, and I'm for it. I think it's kind of, I don't think it's necessarily a good thing whenever we have sometimes there are some conservatives who are very anti-sex education in schools, and I understand the reasoning, but here's the problem with it. Even if you do have sex ed classes in schools, it's not going to address, it's not going to be mean as much at all to a kid as much as it would mean for like a kid's young boy's father to sit him down and go explain to him something. It'll be pretty technical at school, and they might hand out condoms and stuff, but I can't tell you, other than maybe you, Evan, actually, almost pretty much every friend I have, their parents never sat them down and gave them a talk. They pretty much had to learn stuff themselves. And I actually think that's a big issue because, I think it's very important to have parents sit down and talk to their kids about sex.
Yeah, well, it's a lost tradition, really. Because there was that. It used to be a joke you throw around. You're gonna have the talk.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what the talk means. And now I feel like if I made that joke to a 12-year-old today, he wouldn't know what I was talking about.
Man, that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Which I was fortunate. My father was very skittish on the subject. Yeah, I don't know, it was after he realized that I could get any knowledge I wanted on the subject, he became more open. But he was skittish, and he taught me the basics, and then I got a hold of course, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and I listened to Loveline for what became 5 years. And so, I got lucky that I discovered that radio show. But I'm talking more bare minimum. Of course, the ideal is to just have your parents handle that subject, but that's not happening. Unfortunately. I had one guy though that I absolutely wanted to knock out because he told me he didn't use condoms because he couldn't afford them. I wanted to punch his lights out. You can't afford condoms, but you can afford a baby. That's
right. That's like
man.
I don't have a fire extinguisher. I can't afford because I can't afford one. Meanwhile, I'm going to be cooking up teriyaki every night.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can't afford to have any form of birth control, but yet you can. It's like no. And then later that guy ends up getting someone pregnant. And he's surprised. He's surprised the pull-out method didn't work or whatever odd form of birth control he was using.
The reason I think, because I have friends who I've talked to before, and they're like, they use the pull-out method, like, oh yeah, it works every time. It's like, and I'm actually reluctant to tell them some of the biology of it because I'm afraid it'll encourage them more. But a girl can basically only get pregnant like 3 days out of the month, and a lot of guys don't know that, and so they don't realize that the problem is you don't know exactly when those 3 days are. And so by the way, I know I'll probably sound like an idiot to any like health experts, but I know I'm true enough to be able to speak on this, that like whenever the girl's ovulating or whatever. Now there's still a chance that she can get pregnant on other days, but it's just super slim. Like basically, so but the point is, these guys I think are using the pullout method, and it's like the odds are in their favor.
When you say
To,
pregnant, you mean inseminated, right? Where
yeah.
the egg's
Yeah.
not going to become
I
fertile.
mean,
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
I just mean
Okay.
the
Or,
right.
Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
I was using the term right, but yeah.
may the odds be ever in your favor because we don't need any more of you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly, dude.
Uh,
Man. Yeah, so this is not the Hunger Games, this is the Down Under Games. This is that. This
oh
is
man.
that yeah, this is
Yeah.
Flat Tits and Hillbilly Joe. But anyway, I was trying to do a play off of the main character's name, and I realized
Katniss.
that it didn't sound anything like Flat Tits. Yeah, Cat. It doesn't sound anything like that. Anyway, I'm pretty tired, but
You're good.
we can edit that out later. Wait, this is live.
Yep.
Shit. So anyway, just to finish the point there. Crap, what was I saying? Oh, well, I was gonna say with the pullout thing, I think
Yeah.
that they're getting lucky, and they're trying to play it off like it's skill or something, you know. But anyway, that we could
It
go
works
even
every
further.
time, and
Yeah.
it works every time until it doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. It always works until it doesn't. Anyway, we've been recording for a while, so maybe we should wrap it up. But I think we could talk even more about the sex stuff. There's literally several other
Oh, yeah.
topics that I know we could dig into. So I do think we could do a part 2 maybe when it rolls back around to my topic,
Yeah.
or however we want to do it. But maybe we could do. I mean, we could do part 2 next week if we wanted to, and then just refigure the turns or something. However we want to do it, but anyway,
Father's Day comes out like in a couple months, right?
when
Is it? It's. I know it's after Mother's Day, and Mother's Day is in May, right? Or is it beforehand?
Father's Day is June 16th.
June 16th. Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So yeah.
So maybe you could touch back on it then.
Well, actually, I was I was going
And it's
to
on a
like
Saturday too.
I'll probably call this Family Matters, and then do something in parentheses like Fathers Matter or whatever.
Yeah.
And it should be on there for long enough that it'll get found if I put in the right tags.
Okay.
But also, I was wondering if you could kind of do like, I know there's a list, because I feel like based on your introduction, we could probably talk about a number of subtopics.
Yeah.
So do you have like a few things? Can you probably go over the introduction, or like, hit some points that you wanted to?
Well, yeah, I can kind of give an idea of where you want me to just give an idea of where the conversation could go, basically.
Yeah, and then in our part 2, we could either cover that,
Yeah.
and then if the part 2 takes too long, cover that in part 3 or whatever. So
okay, well, basically, I mean, one topic that I think the reason why we can keep talking forever about it is because the family thing, you can put it into these different categories, and then within those, there's a lot of other subjects too. Like you can see how easily we were talking about parenting, basically. And when does basically we were just talking about when does it start, and we ended up talking about sex education for 20 minutes. So there's one area I really wanted to talk about is the kind of the idea of the statistics. I kind of talked about it in the introduction, but we were talking about the fatherless thing, and one topic I wanted to talk about is the Black community has a higher single mother rate.
Yes.
And obviously they also have a higher crime rate, poverty.
Yes.
And I want to be very clear that I'm not trying to make any statements on races, but
Right.
obviously within these certain cultures and these certain areas,
The race
the
doesn't
whole
matter.
family system is broken down.
Yeah.
And by the way, and then also, by the way, the white people are catching up pretty quick.
Mm.
But then on the other end of the spectrum is you have Asian. This is why I'm saying it's not a race thing, but it's a culture thing, because you have Asians, my actual Asian migrants have very strong family structure, and they're the most successful people in America.
Yeah.
I mean, Asian people, they make more money. They do better in school, and they have a very strong family. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a freaking an Asian guy robbing someone? I walked by an Asian guy a couple days ago. He put money back into my wallet. So like this is what I'm talking now.
Yeah.
I'm kidding
Yeah.
around, but
Okay.
honestly, the
Yeah.
well, I guess
Or,
what I'm trying to say, and I know it seems like I'm talking race, but here's the deal: is if you had a if I if you have an adopted Asian son, and he's in a shitty family with a
Right.
shitty, his father, the adopted father walks out or something, he's going to be in the exact same scenario as any other person. So that's why I'm trying to clarify that it's not a race thing. I don't think it's a culture thing.
Right. Okay.
What the environment you're in and how your parents are. And anyway, sorry. So see how easy it is to get into, but that's one area that I can discuss for a while, because
Okay.
we could get into crime, we could get into stats, and then also kind of obviously within that is the thing there with the different family values of Asian culture, and
Okay.
I think that's a pretty good example of a good positive example of
Okay. Yeah.
family structure. But
I would and I'll have to figure this out. But I definitely want to, while we're talking about this topic, I want to get into what I brought up earlier about the family structure, like remembering some business models or something like that. I don't think I'm explaining it very well, but like anyway, like I explained earlier to you, there was something about I don't know if it's like something about like the head, like the dad, and then the wife like representing something, and then the kids are something else. So it's like a representation of how like the family I guess interacts with one another and stuff like that. So I'll have to research some of that and talk about that, because that sounds pretty interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be cool.
So, all right. Well, this was Three's a podcast, and I think the one thing that we covered obviously in overview was how important fathers were and stuff like that. And then so you want to talk about the Asian culture and Black culture on part 2?
Yeah, or at least
Okay.
I think just the different family, just the maybe just look at different countries and stuff too. But
Okay. Okay. Sweet.
I mean, that'll be at least one jumping off point. There'll be, I'm sure there's some other areas we'll get into, but I think we could do a whole podcast almost on that concept alone. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Sweet. All right. Yeah, this was the Three's a podcast, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.